There is a morning you have probably had more than once. You step outside, or you stand at the window, and one of your regular birds is right there, close enough that it should have flushed by now. And then it turns its head, not toward the feeder, toward you. It looks directly at you, and for a moment neither of you moves. You feel something. Not danger, not quite surprise. Something closer to recognition. You told yourself it was nothing, that the bird was simply not alarmed by a familiar shape, that proximity explained it, that you were projecting meaning onto the reflex of a small animal that couldn't possibly know you. That explanation was wrong. What the bird was doing in that moment is one of the most studied and least understood behaviors in backyard ornithology, and it begins long before the morning you noticed it. Welcome back to the bird's lore. This episode is about something that has almost certainly been happening in your yard without your knowledge. The process by which a bird learns your face, stores it, and uses it to make decisions. If you watch birds at a feeder, and you have ever had the sense that one of them knows you specifically, not just your house, not just a general absence of threat, but you, subscribe to this channel, because the science behind what you felt is stranger and more specific than you think. And stay until the end, because the final thing this episode covers changes what it means when a bird flies toward you instead of away. There is a useful piece of received wisdom in backyard birding that runs like this. Birds do not recognize individual humans. They respond to size, movement, posture, and proximity. They learn that a yard is safe because it consistently produces food and no predators follow. The human is background. The human is furniture. This is the standard account, and it is wrong. Not wrong in the vague sense of oversimplified, wrong in the testable, refuted by controlled experiment sense. And understanding exactly how it is wrong tells you something precise about what has been happening at your feeder. The mechanism begins with the eye. A bird's eye is not a worse version of a human eye. It is a different instrument, built for a different problem. Most backyard birds have eyes positioned on the sides of the head, giving them a visual field that approaches 360 degrees, an almost complete sphere of surveillance. Within that field, the fovea, the zone of sharpest focus, is not one region, but often two, one pointing forward and one pointing laterally. This means that when a bird appears to be looking past you, when it seems inattentive, it may in fact have you in its area of highest acuity. It is seeing you more clearly at an angle than you can see it face on. The apparent casualness of a bird at the feeder is not inattention. It is distributed attention, all of it running simultaneously, processing information about every part of its environment at once, including the person standing at the kitchen window 40 feet away. What the bird is doing with that visual information has been the subject of a series of experiments at the University of Washington, the most cited of which ran over several years with American crows in an urban campus environment. Researchers donned latex masks, either a threatening face or a neutral face, and walked specific routes near nesting areas. The threatening mask walkers had captured and banded crows before the study began. The neutral mask walkers had done nothing. Over time, crows that had been caught began scolding, dive-bombing, and mobbing humans wearing the threatening mask, even years after the initial encounter, even when the mask was worn by a completely different person. The recognition was of the face in the mask, not the human wearing it. When threatening mask walkers tilted their masks upside down, the aggression rate fell. The crows were reading specific facial geometry and responding to it as an individual identity. Crows are exceptional, and it would be easy to treat this as a corvid curiosity, an unusually intelligent bird doing an unusually intelligent thing. But research at several other institutions has found individual recognition behavior in species that do not share the crow's general reputation for cognition. Carolina wrens, tufted titmice, and black-capped chickadees have all shown behavioral differentiation between specific humans in repeated observational and field studies. The mechanism appears to be widespread because the adaptive pressure to develop it is widespread. Any bird that lives long enough in proximity to humans, which describes most backyard birds, has strong selection pressure to distinguish the humans who have harmed it or taken its resources from those who have not. Treating all humans as equivalent or treating the entire category as safe are both errors. The bird that can resolve individual identities makes fewer errors. It survives longer. It raises more young. What is actually happening inside the bird's brain when it sees your face is not fully mapped, but the broad outlines are known. Avian visual processing runs through a structure called the nidopallium, a region that does not have a direct mammalian equivalent, but performs functions that overlap with mammalian visual cortex. Pattern recognition, including facial recognition, appears to be handled through a pathway involving the entopallium and the nidopallium caudolateral, a region that researchers at Max Planck Institute for Ornithology have linked to associative learning, the process of connecting a stimulus to a reward or threat outcome. When your face is repeatedly followed by the appearance of seed and the absence of predation, the association builds. The face becomes a predictive signal for a specific type of outcome. The bird is not feeling fondness, or at least there is no evidence for that claim. The bird is registering that this particular visual pattern reliably precedes safety and food. The distinction matters, but it does not diminish what is happening. The bird has built a model of you. This model is not just visual. Research at Cornell Lab of Ornithology on song sparrows and several other backyard species suggests that individual humans are tracked across multiple sensory channels simultaneously: visual, acoustic, and behavioral, your gait, your silhouette, the particular way you move when you refill the feeder versus when you walk past it, doing something else. Birds that have been around a yard long enough distinguish, at a behavioral level, between a person moving toward the feeder with a bag of seed and a person walking past on unrelated business. The response to each is different. In the first case, the birds near the feeder may actually move closer in anticipation, positioning themselves in the nearby shrubs before the seed has been poured. In the second case, they continue whatever they were doing. The prediction runs ahead of the event. The bird has modeled not just who you are, but what different versions of your movement mean. The question of how a bird communicates this information, whether individual recognition remains private knowledge or becomes shared knowledge in a social group, is where the science becomes genuinely remarkable. Black-capped chickadees live in small winter flocks with stable dominance hierarchies. Researchers at Ohio State University, studying winter flock behavior, found that information about predator threats spreads through a chickadee flock through specific call types, and that subordinate birds appear to update their behavior based on the alarm responses of dominant individuals they have been watching. Whether this includes information about specific humans is not yet fully established, but there is clear evidence that chickadees learn which of their flockmates have more reliable threat detection. A new bird joining a winter flock does not start from scratch. It pays attention to the birds that have been in this yard longer, and it adjusts its own behavior accordingly. The flock functions as a distributed memory system. What one bird knows, the flock, over time, comes to act as if it knows. For the species that remain in a yard year-round, chickadees, nuthatches, cardinals, Carolina wrens, individual recognition has a second consequence that takes months to become visible, but changes everything about the relationship. A bird that has correctly categorized you as safe does not simply become less afraid of you. It begins to treat your presence as information. Your appearance at the window early in the morning is not a neutral event, it is a data point. If you appear consistently, and the feeder is consistently full, and nothing dangerous follows your presence, your arrival begins to function as a predictive signal for safety. Over time, birds that have built this association will begin returning to the feeder faster after disruptions when you are visible than when you are absent. Your presence does not just fail to alarm them, it actively calms them. You have become part of their threat assessment environment, not as a background element, but as a specific, named, recognized input that generates a specific behavioral output. The morning this most clearly reveals itself is the morning you notice a bird watching you with what seems, impossibly, like deliberate attention. A white-breasted nuthatch pausing on the feeder post and looking, not past you, but at you. A tufted titmouse that has stopped its eating and turned its head to track your movement across the window. What is happening in that moment is not anthropomorphic fantasy. It is the output of months of successful pattern recognition. The bird has a model of you, built from dozens or hundreds of individual observations, and it is updating that model in real time. The direct look is not curiosity in the human sense. It is an active read, a check-in, a confirmation that the current visual data matches the stored pattern, and that the predicted safe outcome should continue to be expected. There is a word that keeps appearing in the ornithological literature on this subject, and it is not a word the researchers use casually. The word is memory. The studies describe avian recognition as a form of long-term, episodic-like memory, a stored representation of a specific individual associated with a specific history of events, retrievable and applicable to new situations. The face you have been showing your birds all this time is not forgotten between your absences. The pattern is held, the record is maintained. When you come back after 2 weeks away, the birds that have been in your yard are not meeting you for the first time. They are re-encountering a stored representation and recalibrating the present moment against it. Go back to the morning at the beginning of this episode, the bird that turned and looked directly at you. You assumed it was an accident of proximity, a small animal failing to flee from a large one, nothing more. What was actually happening was the conclusion of a long and highly specific process. Over months of shared mornings, the bird had accumulated visual, acoustic, and behavioral data about you. It had built a predictive model. It had updated the model each time the prediction was confirmed, and in that moment at the feeder, it was doing what any accurate predictive system does with a known input. It was reading you, not with fear, not with anything like affection, in the sense we use that word, but with the particular quality of attention that passes between two beings who have been watching each other long enough to know what to expect. The white-breasted nuthatch on your feeder post knows your face. The tufted titmouse in the cedar outside your window has your movement pattern stored and accessible. The chickadees that come in from the hedge before you have finished pouring the seed are not following the seed. They are following the person who brings it, because they have learned to tell that person apart from every other human who has ever walked through that yard. The look was not nothing. The look was recognition. And the thing that makes it significant is not that it happened once. It is that it has been happening all along, and the birds simply showed it to you this morning.